government. And every time the government collapses, because that is fundamentally antithetical to Somali culture. So you have to find a way, and a way to find, to bring political stability to Somalia is to find some kind of a very, very weak central government or loose confederation type of government. That is something which will work there. But once we find a political solution and bring political order to Somalia, then we can talk about, say, agricultural development. But right now, I don't think so. There was a question somewhere? Yes?
Yes. Back to the farming. I was wondering if the water or lack thereof, if there's, that's affected land and able to be farmed. Does that make sense?
Of water?
Well, lack
Of water?
Yeah, lack of water as land is getting more arid in certain places.
You mean Africa generally, West Africa, or Somalia, or where?
Well, just when you were talking about, I guess you were talking about Ghana,
Yes.
or you were just talking about, I was just wondering if any of the water issues are
Yes,
a problem.
yes. Water has always been a problem in African agriculture, in the sense that traditionally, water is, traditionally crops have been rain-fed, okay? There is very little, irrigation. And as a result of that, because of the scarcity of water, okay, you also have cattle, herdsmen, who are always going in search of water, okay? Now, we have not addressed that problem in Africa. And there are very, very simple ways of addressing that problem, okay? And I like to put an idea in the minds of, some of these students who are here, for example, okay? And because, you see, in Africa, in West Africa, we have two seasons, okay? We have a rainy season, and then we have a dry season, okay? Now, it hasn't occurred to us that, in the rainy season, at least we should save some of the water, okay? And use in the dry season. And saving the water isn't anything which is complex, okay? Now, you can build earthen dams, okay? You can build earthen dams and sort of trap some of the water. Now, anybody can use the water, and then there will be, now remember that there have been fights over water resources in Africa, okay? And you can solve that problem very, very easily by putting earthen dams, okay, in some of the rural villages, for example. Here's a project, which somebody is doing, and that is, and it was an American who was doing this. He went to a village in Zambia and built a dam, a small dam, which collected water. And then he stocked that pond with fish, okay? And the fish grew and multiplied and multiplied. And once a year, in the dry season, the chief and the villagers, they would drain the pond and then collect all the fish and then sell it on the market. And of course, they have some revenue. And then they'll plug the dam up and then put some more water in there. And the farmers can use some of the water also to irrigate their farms. The cattlemen will also use some of the water. So this here is a very, very sort of practical sort of idea which starts at the village. It doesn't involve a lot of money. I mean, you can construct an earthen dam. You can even go to the if you explain this to the chief of the village, okay, the chief of the village could, sort of corral, let's say, the youth of the village, to provide labor. That's what we did when we were building up the clinics, for example. The chiefs, brought the young people together. All that we did was to provide food for the to the youth, for example. So in other words, the expenditures that you needed to build a dam, for example, $2,000, you can use that to build a dam, for example. That you can do. There are also certain little things that you can do to help the people. As I indicated to you, African farmers, most of them are women. They collect their produce, take their produce to the homestead, carrying it on their heads. Whatever that they can't carry, okay, is left on the farm to rot. Okay? We have to think of a simple way by which they can get more food out of the farms. A simple donkey-drawn cart, for example, can help. It doesn't have to be a tractor, a simple donkey-drawn cart. A donkey doesn't need gasoline, just grass. Excuse me. It's a simple thing. There's plenty of food in Africa. You can build a cart. And I must say this. I read about this in my book, Africa Unchained. And some African Americans saw this. So he's gone to a village in northern Ghana, and he's actually trying to put together a project of donkey-drawn carts for the villages in that particular area. Now, here's also another project. The women, when they bring their food crops to the villages, use part of it to feed their families. And then they take the surplus to markets. There are village markets, but sometimes the women can't go all the way to the village market. So what do? They set up rickety tables by the roadside to sell their crops, produce. Anybody who's been to Africa before have seen this. One thing which, let's say, an entrepreneur can do is to build a food distribution depot and then pay cash to any farmer who brings their produce to the depot. Now this way, then you relieve the women of a whole lot of drudgery. They don't have to spend all day sitting by the roadside, for example. In fact, selling goods by the roadside is hazardous, it's dangerous. You know, the women can be killed, if a car doesn't, runs through them. Now, when you have a food distribution depot, for example, and you buy produce from the farmers, for example, then you being a cheater, an angry, educated African, for example, will know a better way by which you can store the food. And you also know of markets, okay, in the urban areas where you can sell this particular food produce. Putting up, let's say, a warehouse, for example, a distribution depot, doesn't cost that much money. With $10,000, you can put something like this up. Now, but then, this $10,000 is something which I call meso-capital. Meso-capital. In other words, it goes beyond microcredit finance. It's a step above microcredit finance. See, what microcredit finance does is it gives small loans, $50, $100 to individual, let's say, farmers, for example. But with meso-capital, of say $10,000 when you put up a food distribution depot, for example, you're not just helping one person, but you're helping a whole lot of people. Because there you'll be able to take advantage of what economists call economies of scale, for example. Now, having relieved this woman of the drudgery of sitting by the roadside, you have saved her some time, okay? Now, that time that you have saved her, she can devote that time to plant and produce more food, okay, so that she can earn more money, okay? It's the same thing with the technologies that we've seen in a household, for example. When we have microwave ovens, for example, look at the time that is saved. That time that is saved can be devoted to producing more outside the home. Another idea is to build a market. Actually, I'm giving you all the ideas that I'm going to implement myself. I'm also going to build a market. Okay, and the market is again, if you go to any African market, traditional African market, it is filthy. It is crowded. it is open air, for example. Now, think about this. Let's say with an investment of something like $300,000, you can put up a structure and then put stalls in them with locks, okay? With places of convenience at these markets. And then you can rent those stalls out, okay, to the market women. Now, again, you're not introducing anything new. All that you're doing is simply reorganizing them to make the whole operations just efficient, okay? But then the elites wouldn't do something like this. In Ghana, my country, somebody spent $3 million to build ABC Mall. It's all air conditioned. And they're selling imported goods, including Gucci bags. Again, this is development by imitation. I mean, if you set up a mall producing, selling Gucci bags, how does that help the peasant in the village, for example?
And they can't transport all the products that they actually produce. Is it more equitable, is it conceivable to have a more equitable division of labor between men and women to work in the traditional sector so that men assume more responsibility? I know this is politically, culturally
incorrect.
Incorrect on the outside, and it's correct here, and maybe incorrect there, but it's
well, okay. I think I should clarify a point. When I said that there was sexual division of labor and agriculture and growing food crops as being a vocation of, I should have, at least, mentioned something about the role of the duties of men. African men just don't sit under coconut trees and drink, beer all day. Traditionally, African men, the avocation of African men has been with, more of the dangerous type of, work, like hunting, okay? Like fishing, for example, and putting up, the tribe, the homesteads, building the huts, for example, and also defending the village, against rival tribes, for example. But again, these particular roles really haven't changed that much, okay? And so the women tend to bear much of the brunt of, everyday work. Now, what happened was that, okay, the men still fish, okay? Now, but after independence, there are no more tribal wars. So what did the men do? They simply migrated to the urban areas where there's the disco and the bright lights and everything, okay? So there are lots of women who are left in the villages, and we have to find a way by which we can help them, find a way by which, let's say a simple donkey drawn cart, for example, could help. Okay, and try and find out ways by which we can help them. Yes?